Good day to everyone. I am Samir and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. On behalf of Beroe, I would like to welcome you all to the webinar on Taming Asia's Digital Behemoth Leveraging Potential by Category Prioritization from Beroe Insights. So in today's webinar, we will have our speakers discuss and help us understand how best digital marketing services can be procured in the Asia Pacific region. So before we move ahead with the presentation, I have some general set of instructions as always. Number one, please note all the attendees will be placed on mute. Number two, during the course of presentation, if you would like to post questions, you will find a box on the right hand side of your screen indicated in red on the slide. Request you to type your question and hit the send button. As and when the presentation progresses, I will note down the high-frequency questions and will pose it to the presenter at the end of the session. In case you are experiencing any connection-related issues, all you need to do is close the window, go back to the email, and try to connect using the same link. If there are further problems, please reach out to Puneet via email. His email ID is puneet.ramal@beroe-inc.com. That's punet.ramal@beroe-inc.com, which you can also find in the email. Moving on, let me quickly introduce the speaker for today, Koustav Chatterjee. Koustav is a senior research analyst, and he specializes on digital marketing procurement for CPG, pharmaceutical, and telecom industries. Additionally, he's also worked on multiple categories, which includes creative advertising and promotional items. In Beroe, Koustav successfully worked on projects that assess convenient retail strategy in international markets. In fact, one of the projects Koustav worked on was to perform spend analysis on key digital marketing categories across 14 APAC countries. And now, let me pass it on to Koustav.
Thank you, Samir, for the introduction. Good day, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on Taming Asia's Digital Behemoth, Leveraging Potential by Category Prioritization. Digital marketing deserves your strategic attention, as it has the ability to influence consumers across the entire product purchase journey. Thus, it is even more critical to understand how marketers should procure digital marketing services to ensure great result. Our research showed category managers are relatively more confident of procuring digital marketing services from developed economies such as US and Western Europe. But when it comes to Asia Pacific region, they always engage with best-in-class suppliers, primarily due to lack of an effective procurement framework which should enable them to define spend, segment market, source from best potential countries, and measure incumbent suppliers. The APAC online spend has already surpassed Western Europe and currently stands at $28 billion US. The spend is growing at an unprecedented rate of 20 to 25%, which is almost 100% higher than developed economies. Hence, it is imperative to understand the APAC market and embrace an informed procurement decision. This webinar should be able to provide you that framework, which is backed by latest procurement thinking and best-in-class engagement strategies. Today, we are going to discuss about how best digital marketing services should be procured from the APAC region. For that, first, we are going to understand whether digital marketing really deserves your strategic attention and how the APAC market currently looks like from the demand and supply perspective. Next, we'll try to define a typical current state of a marketer who is finding great difficulties in streamlining digital marketing procurement in the APAC region. Finally, we guide you through our proprietary procurement framework and help you make an informed sourcing decision in future. Now let's find out digital marketing spend's contribution to global ad spend. As you can observe, in 2012, digital spend contributed 21% to global ad spend. But by 2018, the contribution will be surged to 31%. This number is even more significant for the fact that global ad spend will grow at a rate of 4% in the same period, and marketers have increased digital marketing operating budget by 20% when compared with 2012. The key reasons for shifting investment from traditional to digital media are global process digitization, opportunity to monetize, and explosive consumer adoption of digital media. Speaking of adoption, let's add some perspective to it. This showcases marketeer spend distribution across major mediums, traditional and digital. And this is the time split in percentages a typical consumer spent on each medium. Hence, there's a clear pattern of allocating advertising spend without really considering consumers' media consumption habit. I'm not saying that there should be a perfect alignment, but at least spend on print can definitely be shifted towards digital. Now that we know how important digital marketing is going to be for leading marketeers, let's try to understand whether the Asia-Pacific region really deserves your strategic attention or not. In 2012, APAC's online spend surpassed spend on Western Europe and stood at 29%. But by 2018, there won't be any changes, and APAC will continue to outpace Western Europe with higher margin. The reason is obvious. Over the past few years, markets have realized that opportunity in the Asia-Pacific region is largely untapped, and adoption of digital mediums will continue to be lightning fast. After all, from 2012 to 2015, there will be more than 700 million consumers who will start using internet. The retail sales will outpace developed economies by 7 times in the same period. So it is clear that the APAC region is going to be a priority region for global marketeers for at least next 5 to 10 years. Hence, it is important to understand how the APAC markets currently look like from the digital marketing demand and supply perspective. Let's talk about the demand first. The e-commerce landscape is largely consolidated to China and Japan. Hence, it is not a surprise that 70% online spend is merged in those two countries. But in terms of spend growth, South Asian markets are moving rapidly as their digital infrastructures continue to improve, and key statistics such as internet penetration, broadband speed, smartphone sales leapfrog every quarter. On the supply front, China and Japan, Singapore and South Korea currently offer maximum digital agency footprint. These agencies offer full service capabilities and recruit local resource for execution. For branding and account management, often agencies bring resources from developed nations to ensure consistency in project output and client relationship. Local or regional agencies are known for their capability on digital production and designing space. Widely known creative directors often start their own venture and ensure cost competitiveness and reduction of sourcing complexity. Now let's focus on major digital spend categories. As you can see, search and display marketing enjoy maximum spend share, which ranges from 40 to 90%. In China and Singapore, it ranges from 80 to 90%, and in Japan and Australia, it ranges from 40 to 60%. This spend distribution also indicates consumers' media preference and most frequently adopted digital media channels. In terms of consumer preference, it is also important to state that markets such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines, consumers trust promotional content through email more than search and display services. Also, if you can observe the end user segmentation, it shows that it differs depending on target market. Hence, it is clear that the APAC markets are dissimilar, and digital marketing procurement strategy should be inclusive of such differences. But before jumping the gun, let's evaluate a typical current state of a marketeer who was finding great difficulties in streamlining digital marketing procurement in the Asia Pacific region. Our experience with a global marketer revealed that they are currently spending around 50 to 60 million US dollar on digital marketing in the Asia Pacific region. A very good spend. But the problem lies elsewhere. For the specified services, they're currently engaging with more than 100 digital marketing agencies. We believe it is significantly high, especially when 20 to 25% of them are global players with full service capabilities. The fact that 50% agencies are local is also alarming. We found that in an extremely priority region, they have only engaged locally. Hence, an opportunity of assuring quality services was lost. The worst part is the global stakeholders never realized how critical that region is for them, and hence never doubted the strategy of engaging locally. The problem does not end here. Due to lack of procurement framework in place, regional and local category managers felt the spend is fragmented with low visibility. They were not aware of consolidation and negotiation levers, and they were not linking agency remuneration with campaign performances, as obviously they were not sure of relevant KPIs and how that should lead to paying incumbents more accurately. But how to address these problems? Next, I'll help you to practice the procurement framework on a day-to-day basis. But let's understand the framework first. This framework outlines responsibilities which category managers should be accountable to. Global stakeholders must define the online spend and segment market to identify best country to source digital marketing services. Regional stakeholders will adhere to that sourcing strategy and harness consolidation opportunities. Local stakeholders need to abide to that consolidation technique and facilitate negotiation and measurement tactics. The communication among stakeholders must be free-flowing and proactive. Sourcing decision should be inclusive of regional and line managers' input. Now, let's focus on each segment independently and help you to adopt best-in-class procurement decisions. First, it is important to define digital spend on portfolio categories. Simply, how much marketers spend on digital media, digital creative, and digital production services. As you can observe, digital media attracts high spend with 60 to 70%, and it is followed by digital creative, which comprises of 20 to 30%. Our research showed that spend on digital production services such as versioning, translation, website maintenance, and content localization should be anywhere between 10 to 15%. Now that we know about the spend distribution, we need to understand how this spend should be distributed among incumbent agencies. Ideally, 80% indirect spend should be concentrated to 20% incumbent agencies. But how to achieve that? The answer is simple but very effective. For digital media, marketers in APAC generally don't engage with more than 1 to 3 global media agencies. Hence, 60 to 70% digital spend is already consolidated to limited number of incumbent agencies. Considering the 80-20 rule, number of agencies for digital creative can be rationalized accordingly. This will reduce sourcing complexity, makes your account much more attractive to agencies, and you realize much more control. We found that by 2011, only 55% CPG and manufacturing companies have consolidated 80% spend, which includes but not limited to digital, to less than 20% incumbent agencies. For APAC, we are convinced that even less number of firms would have pursued the same. However, pharma and health industry has come out as a mature buyer, as a hoping 90% healthcare companies have consolidated their 80% indirect spend to less than 20% suppliers. Now that the spend is defined, next we'll try to identify best country to source digital marketing from the Asia Pacific region. At step 1, buyers need to try to rank markets based on their potential and buyer's priority. Since countries will be positioned on the priority potential grid, buyers further need to define parameters for them. Once the parameters are bridged, all the APAC markets or focus regions should be measured on their ability to offer sound digital infrastructure, generate sustainable demand, and assure supply. Also, buyers operating brands in these regions and revenue contribution by each market should determine priority. Once they're positioned on the priority potential quadrant, marketeers would know what to do. But wait, is it enough? Or we are missing something? We observe that few markets which can be positioned in the high potential, high priority quadrant may not always be an ideal country to source for. For that, a trade-off analysis between cost and risk should be initiated. Let's take an example. We realize that agencies in China on an average quote 15 to 20% less than APAC average billing rates. But assurance of quality supply is not always ensured. Hence, we concluded that over-concentration on China may not be preferred. Rather, development of a central hub in China and building regional hubs on other high priority and high potential markets is a much more effective way to avoid risk and confirm spend rationalization. So now we know best APAC countries to source digital marketing services from. Next, we'll focus on engagement strategies, pricing models, contract length, and relevant digital marketing services for the Asia Pacific region. It is important to remember that brands play an integral role in procurement. Hence, we have tried to capture different APAC-specific procurement dynamic based on how marketeers' brands are currently positioned across the product life cycle. Hence, it is also essential to first form different clusters of operating brands based on their current market propositions. Are they recently launched? Are they launched regionally? Are these global billion-dollar blockbuster brands? Have these brands become generic? Is revenue declining from a set of brands? Once marketers answer this, half the job is done. For the remaining half, let's find out how best to adopt procurement strategies. Let's take an example of growing brands, which are launched in select countries with an intention of future expansion to other APAC regions. We all know that APAC's marketing communication for these brands carry a profound regional and local influence. Hence, it will be ideal to shortlist regional network agencies which can offer extensive APAC footprint through registered office or network subsidiary collaboration. Their creative resource should comprise of regional talents who are well aware of local sensibilities and regulatory protocols. The preferred pricing model would be a combination of fixed and performance-based fee, and the spend ratio should be 75% and 25%, as during the growth phase, awareness, engagement, and action are very, very important to further achieve the overall objective of expansion to other markets. The contract length should be anywhere between 6 months to 1 year. A relatively smaller tenure, as quarterly performance measurement is critical to quickly decide and adjust content and realign digital media for brands in the growth phase. Relevant digital categories for this phase are email, SMS, search, and website marketing, as brands receive consumers' first attention through these levers. Now we'll talk about blockbuster brands. These are billion-dollar brands, and marketers often continue to work with global network agencies for decades. Thus, client-agency relationship is value-based and not cost-based. Marketers carry significant power to negotiate suppliers and even direct them to pool best resources from their network subsidiaries to receive dedicated attention. Also, global brands' promotional content in the APAC region have increasingly become standardized and follow structures of domestic markets. The pricing models remain same, but online spend ratio should be changed to 85 to 15% for fixed and performance-based model respectively, primarily because a large number of digital engagement can be attributed to strong brand awareness and not essentially due to performance of a particular campaign. Marketers can further derive cost saving by decoupling production from creative categories and engage locally for translation, versioning, web hosting, web maintenance services. On an average, by doing that, they can expect to save cost worth of 15 to 25%. However, we must remember that senior procurement stakeholders need to convince marketing stakeholders and agency personnel that digital, creative, and media still their most important spend categories. Relevant categories for mature markets and mature brands are video and dynamic banner advertisements. For declining brands, local engagement is preferred to rationalize marketing spend versus revenue ratio. Local agencies on an average should charge 10 to 20% less than global agencies. The contract length should be anywhere between 1 month to 6 months to monitor consumer traction in quick intervals, and relevant spend categories would be CRM, QR code, digital coupons. As we learned about the preferred sourcing and engagement strategies, it is also important to realize that without a sound consolidation tactic, the procurement decision may become less effective and appear as random. Hence, let's find out whether digital portfolio categories can be consolidated to meet the 80-20 threshold. Our industry research shows that there are two types of consolidation which are currently in practice: service level consolidation and brand level consolidation. Let's bring some clarity on that. First, we need to understand how service level consolidation can be achieved. As mentioned earlier, global marketers often consolidate their entire Asia Pacific digital media account with 1 or 2 global media agencies. These are the media agencies who can offer media planning, bidding, and buying activity for the entire gamut of brands. It is often preferred that one of the agencies will handle the blockbuster brands, another one will supervise the rest. For brand level consolidation, we'll rely on a strategy which treats every brand cluster separately. The digital portfolio categories in focus are digital creative and digital production services. Let's take the example of mature brands this time. Based on our interaction with global category managers, we have realized that as they carry limited knowledge about the APAC market, they form agency of records by engaging with global digital or traditional creative agencies for the digital creative services, and also allow them to supervise the entire roster of digital agencies in the Asia Pacific region. But for digital production, to achieve cost saving and include local sensibilities, marketers often engage locally. For growing brands, the scenario is little different. Marketers are much more aggressive in promotional strategies for these brands. Hence, they often engage with regional network or independent agencies to adopt advanced technology-enabled marketing tactics such as real-time targeting and dynamic creative optimization. Since these technologies are proprietary, creative and production both can be merged and given to a single type of agency. For declining brands, local engagement prevails. Finally, we must reinforce that digital agency of records must take the accountability of supervising other agencies through periodic meeting and creative consent review. They also need to act as a digital consultant to others for their extensive knowledge of local preference and consumer media consumption habits from the Asia Pacific region. Our interaction with global, regional, and local agencies revealed that they perceive negotiation levers as a non-exploitable property as long as they are rational. We need to remember that digital marketing agencies from the Asia Pacific region, be it global, regional, or local, are growing their capabilities every day, and in no way they can be termed as mature suppliers. Hence, marketers should perceive this as an opportunity to develop suppliers by sharing resources and not try to bottleneck them. Hence, simply marketers may adopt two sets of negotiation strategies. One is for consolidated big account. Key levers would be payment term adjustments. As I mentioned earlier, supplier will be delighted if marketers make 12 months upfront payment from the fixed part, and they will be happy to provide you at least 3 to 5% discount. For project-based engagements, marketers expect discount up to 10% for promised and uninterrupted accounts. We need to also remember that these rates cannot be merged, and they also vary widely depending on the focus industry. Now that marketers have defined spend, devised sourcing strategy, estimated consolidation, and negotiation tactics, the final and one of the most important procurement pillar would be to measure the performance of agency engagement. Also, how performance ratios should be guiding you to take agency remuneration decision by adhering to the 80-20 billing rate rule. First, we need to define campaign objectives. For digital campaigns, there are essentially 4 objectives on which marketers should measure the incumbent agencies: their ability to raise awareness, trigger engagement, influence action, and sustain advocacy. Now, for each of these objectives, we must define separate set of key performance indicators. As you can observe, for awareness, typical KPI would be number of impressions, search ranking, number of unique visitors. Similarly, we need to define KPI for other objectives also. Here, I must mention that this is not an exhaustive list, and we have much more detailed KPI list for each of these objectives. Once we finalize the key performance indicator list, we must access peer benchmark in terms of average campaign performance scores relevant for marketers' industry. Internal benchmark should be higher than peer benchmark to ensure competitiveness, but the ratio should be balanced and not overtly imposing. Next, with the help of effective marketing technologies such as Raven, Salesforce, Twitter Counter, marketers need to track their digital campaign performances and compare actual result with intended results. Based on how actual performance fare against peer and internal benchmark, marketers can assign score to each KPI under each objective. Average score should define score for each objective. This segment should define how marketers' incumbent agencies performed across all key objectives. They should also highlight areas which need marketers' immediate attention. The overall average score will define efficiency of the incumbent agency on a scale of 100%. For example, here the incumbent agency is just 20% effective, whereas ideally they should have been 100% effective. Hence, based on the efficiency score, marketers need to benchmark their performance-based pricing. There have been cases where marketers paid bonuses to agencies for achieving exceptional results. In the conclusion slide, I would like to say that procurement of marketing services, especially in international market like the Asia Pacific, is not easy. Hence, let's draw a procurement roadmap for global marketeers. Your existing procurement pain points can be addressed more effectively only when you adopt a continuous process of category assessment and prioritization. At step 1, the APAC markets need to be scrutinized and marketeers need to realize whether it's part of their long-term business objective. If no, then adopting a next-generation procurement framework may not serve the purpose. Rather, they must engage locally to rationalize spend. If the answer is yes, category managers must move to step 2 and 3, where they would reach out to third-party research organizations to identify relevant digital marketing services and sourcing best practices. If the outcome does not align with their overarching category objective, again, it is preferred to stick to the local engagement tactic. If yes, then they need to go ahead and define digital ad spend. If they perceive their APAC revenue justifies the digital budget, then they should identify best country to source from by taking regional and local category managers' input. Finally, when the engagement is initiated, category managers must remember that exploiting suppliers with stiff negotiation or KPI guidelines should be avoided. Rather, let's encourage a transparent engagement where timely communication and strategy adherence are ensured. Simply, let's develop suppliers to reduce sourcing complexity. It should also be mentioned that marketers should not jump steps to arrive at a decision, and the entire assessment should be pursued in a span of 1 to 2 years to slowly but steadily leverage the digital potential of the Asia-Pacific region. Now with that, I would like to hand over the presentation to Samir. We'll be glad to address any questions with regards to the presentation. Samir, over to you.
Thank you, Koustav. That was insightful. Now I get the importance of adopting a scientific procurement methodology before creating a sourcing strategy for digital marketing in the Asia-Pacific region. I will now take up the high-frequency questions received during today's webinar. Koustav, the first question we received was, you mentioned that global marketeers in the APAC region have consolidated their media account to 1 or 2 global media networks. Can you provide some examples?
Surely, Samir. Great question, actually. Let me take the example of few global CPG companies. I'll start with Unilever. In the Asia-Pacific region, they have consolidated their entire media account to PhD and ADK. They're also assessing the capability of mindshare for future engagements. Reckitt Benckiser only engages with Initiative Asia-Pacific, and Johnson & Johnson allocated the media account to OMD and UM. I hope that answers the question, Samir.
It does. We received another question, which is, typically, what is the digital marketing budget as a percentage of global marketeers' revenue? Has it been increasing?
Typically, the digital marketing portfolio will share around 2 to 3% of marketers' revenue, and the budget has been increasing. For example, in 2013, on an average, 3% revenue is allocated to digital marketing when compared to 2.5% in 2012.
All right. Seems we have just about enough time to take one last question. The third question that came up was how pharma industry fares in digital marketing investment in the Asia-Pacific region.
Pharma industry typically invests only 1 to 6% of their DTC budget in digital marketing. The spend is also skewed towards blockbuster drugs, which generally receives 50 to 90% investments. The low spend can be attributed to vague regional regulatory landscape and consumers' low receptibility towards receiving healthcare information from digital mediums. We need to understand that consumers in the Asia-Pacific regions still rely completely on physicians' prescription and have limited influence over drug purchase. Key digital categories in terms of spend concentration are branded websites, e-detailing software, online banner ads, and mobile applications for major therapeutic categories.
All right, thank you. Well, that wraps up today's webinar. In case anyone has any questions, do feel free to email them to Puneet at puneet.chatterjee Ramal at Beroe-inc.com. That's PUNET.RAMAUL at Beroe-inc.com, which you can also find in the email. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great day ahead. Thanks once again.